As we approach summer 2022 here in the UK, I want to talk to you about walkie-talkies. This video is aimed specifically really at parents who might be looking to use walkie-talkies with their children. Or maybe just family groups using them on a camping trip, or alternatively kind of on a walking trip or something like that. We're not talking about business use here, we're talking about consumer use of walkie-talkies. And I want to cover kind of 5 topics, things that are important about using walkie-talkies and things that are worth considering. And then I just want to talk to you about a few sort of functionality things, a few features that are worth looking out for on walkie-talkie. So it's totally aimed at beginners, this. So if you're totally new to using a walkie-talkie, then stay tuned. The first point I want to talk about is security. If you are a parent and you've given some walkie-talkies to your kids, be aware that as a general rule, no communication on a walkie-talkie is secure. It's not meant to be. I mean, they're on open frequencies and anybody can hear them. It's really important to remember that, because I think parents tend to maybe think that they've got some kind of encryption or they've got some kind of privacy. They might see the word privacy written on the box or something like that, and they'll think that no one can hear what their children are saying. So, as a result, it's definitely worth having a conversation with your kids beforehand and kind of saying to them, you know, don't mention any personal information, don't mention any location information, don't give anything away that you wouldn't want public. Because although these walkie-talkies have limited range from one to another, they can have much larger range when you're using a sort of more suitable sort of receiver, if you like. It's a really important one, which is why I've mentioned it first. If you do have any questions on it, please do put them down in the comments. I will happily answer them if I know the answer to those questions. The second one is range. Now, I did just mention range in the last one, and it's the one people always ask about and they always talk about. What is the range of a walkie-talkie? Well, most walkie-talkies that you buy, including kids' walkie-talkies, are going to be the PMR 446 standard, the Professional Mobile Radio 446 standard. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but the power of that sort of specification, if you like, is 0.5 watts, so 500 milliwatts of power. If that means nothing to you, don't worry about it. Effectively, what it means range-wise is you can realistically expect about 100 to 200 meters without question. So if you've got your kids wanting to talk to each other from the bedroom to the garden, not a problem. If you've got a friend, you know, your child has a friend who they want to talk to a couple of streets away, probably not going to be a problem. You can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get 100 to 200 meters. Past that, maybe not. And so that's the kind of distance I always say to people when they say, how far can these walkie-talkies go? It's always going to be about that kind of distance. But remember, and this comes back to the security bit I mentioned just before, that they can go much further. So if you have somebody that's sat up on a hill 6 miles away, trying to receive you with a suitable antenna and a better receiver, they will be able to receive you. If you've got somebody, if I give my 8-year-old a walkie-talkie to use and he's sat down here in the centre of Bristol and I go up on a hill outside 5 or 6 miles away, I'll be able to listen to him and he'll be able to talk to me because we're in very advantageous spots from a radio point of view. So bear in mind that although you might think that your kind of kids are inside this little kind of reception bubble of only 100 meters or 200 meters, those transmissions are going much, much further and can potentially be picked up across. I mean, a 100 to 200 meter radius is quite a lot of coverage anyway, but if you make that kind of a 5-mile radius, that's a lot of people who could potentially hear what your kids are saying and what you're saying as a family. Could be a bad thing, could be a good thing, depends which way you look at it. But there you go, 100 to 200 meters is a rough guide for these type of radios, for any kind of walkie-talkie you'll be buying for a family or kids. All these radios, regardless of what they say on the box, regardless of what the marketing stuff says, they will have either 8 channels if it's pre-2018 or 16 channels if it's after 2018. And most of the time, 16 channels will be unlocked. Some radios, such as this little Motorola here, comes with only 8 channels enabled, and you have to actually physically, you have to unlock them through a series of kind of button presses and things, which is mentioned in the manual, to get to the 16 channels open. And that is the PMR 446 standard. As I mentioned, that is the standard for walkie-talkies in the UK and Europe. In America, it's different. In America, and I'm not sure about the rest of the world, I don't know what the rest of the world is around kind of their walkie-talkie standards. It'll be different for your country, the legal kind of requirements and the frequency spectrum and all that type of thing. But if you're in the UK, the whole of Europe, or America, well, then the UK or the EU, you've got PMR 446. And in the US, you have FRS. You cannot use FRS walkie-talkies in the UK legally, or in Europe legally. Watch out for that. But channel-wise, as I say, you can use any of the channels. You are free to use any you want. Don't let any kind of radio enthusiast or business come to you and say, well, no, we use that channel. You know, if you've got a pub down the road using a specific channel, everybody has a right to use whichever channel they like on these license-free walkie-talkies. However, there is etiquette when it comes to this sort of thing. For example, Channel 8 is generally known as a kind of calling channel or a long-distance channel. And what that means is if you choose to use Channel 8, you're likely to, 1, get more traffic, 2, get more high-powered traffic, because people will be using higher power on that channel. And also, there's much more potential to get bad language. And, well, to be honest, any channel between 1 and 8 is more likely to have businesses on. And from what I've heard of business use, you're very likely to get more bad language on those channels. So be aware of it. And I would say, if at all possible, if you're going to give a walkie-talkie to a child, ask them to use between channels 9 and 16, because they're nowhere near as heavily used. They've only been out for the last 4 years. And they're definitely going to be clearer, you'll get better performance, and you're much, much less likely to get any kind of interference or people listening or hearing what you're saying at the same time. Now, this one's always a bit tricky. When I say privacy codes, it might be marked on your box, on the box of the walkie-talkies, as sub-channels. It might be marked as CTCSS codes or DCS codes. There's all this naming convention. Don't worry about it. It doesn't add any kind of additional bandwidth, or it doesn't add any additional spectrum or any additional channels. They are not additional channels. If I have a radio like this, when I turn it on and I'm not picking something up from somebody, the squelch is enabled. The squelch is just something that kicks in and stops the radio from making that horrible static sound when I'm not actually picking up a transmission. As soon as somebody sends something to my radio, so as soon as I receive a transmission from another radio, the squelch opens up and I can hear it. Simple, right? What privacy codes do is they add something to your reception to say, well, actually, I want to also, together with the transmission, also receive a certain tone or a certain digital signal to open up the squelch. So you might have a business down the road using channel 1, and they might be sending a privacy code of 1. If your radio is set to a privacy code of 5, it won't open up the squelch. So although you'll be receiving, you'll be receiving that transmission, and your radio will be able to pick it up, and you'll be able to potentially hear it, the squelch will not open up and you won't hear it. That's what a privacy code is all about. It's just saying to your radio, on this channel, I want to also receive this tone or this code together with your transmission in order to open up the squelch and let you hear what I'm saying. So if I have this set to privacy code 5 and I press this, I will transmit that tone, and this radio might be set to privacy code 5 and it'll open up the squelch because it's receiving it from this radio. Hopefully that's sort of cleared up what privacy codes are all about. They're not an extra security layer. They're not extra capacity in any way, shape or form, but they do add a certain degree of privacy because they stop other people, you know, hearing your transmissions just out of the box. The problem is, most people don't change them, so they leave them to the defaults of whatever they are when they get the walkie-talkies. So people just use the same ones, in which case all the radios are going to hear each other. But that's up to you to then set up your radios as you want them. So maybe change that privacy code to 14 or 18, or make sure all your radios are set to the same, and everybody will be able to hear each other. Power and charging, well, from a power point of view, you've generally got a choice with walkie-talkies. This one here, this Motorola, this old Motorola, uses, I think this uses 4 AAAs. This one uses 3 AAs. This one uses a lithium-ion battery, so a rechargeable battery, like a pack on the back. They kind of have advantages and disadvantages, really. Of course, the great thing with these is that they are USB rechargeable. The lithium-ion ones are, you know, the rechargeable packs are USB rechargeable. The big benefit with something that uses AA's, of course, you can use rechargeable batteries in these, and what it means is if you are out and you don't have any ability to charge something with USB, you can just take multiple batteries really easily and just swap them out, put in new batteries, and you're up and running straight away again. So which power option you will use really depends on what you're doing with the walkie-talkie and where you're planning to use it. As far as charging goes, most walkie-talkies these days, the cheaper walkie-talkies will not come with a charger, will not come with a USB charger. They'll just come with a basic USB cable to allow you to use with, you know, your standard phone charger or whatever, if it's a USB chargeable device. If it's a radio like this that has AA's, they will usually come with some rechargeable cells, and they might even come with a nice sort of base station which you can kind of place it on to allow easy charging. You can plug in the wall. That's actually really convenient if in certain circumstances. But again, with the whole power and charging thing, it does depend on what you're going to be doing with the walkie-talkie. I want us to just talk to you now about a few things that I would recommend, and maybe just things to look out for, and a few features to look out for on walkie-talkies if you're thinking about buying some, or you're thinking about looking for some. You can pay anything between, you know, £8 and £100 for a walkie-talkie, and more. I mean, it depends what you want to spend. Like with anything, you know, you've got this basic, and all the models I'm showing you today are from Motorola. There's no reason for that. I'm not sponsored by Motorola. They're just a brand that I like, and I have lots of sort of random products from them. So this is a kind of a kids, it's aimed at kids and families, this one, even though it doesn't actually have privacy codes. That's the biggest downside of this one, but it's really nice and small, really compact, colourful. You know, it's great little device. These are cheap. I think these are about £30 for 3, so you really can't go wrong with something like this. And then on the higher side, you've got kind of this, which would be used more as a business, and these are about £80 to £100 per walkie-talkie. So, you know, and then you've got these in the middle, which are about £50, £60 for 2. So there's all sorts of from Chinese manufacturers. You can get really cheap stuff. But I think the first thing I would say around walkie-talkies is, if you're giving them to children, it's worth just teaching them a bit how to use them, because the whole concept these days of half duplex communication is not that well sort of established in kids these days. They chat, and I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this, where if you've watched a child use a phone and use it just as a phone, they immediately just expect to see video. They expect to see a picture of someone that they're talking to. And the idea of giving them something where they physically have to press a button to talk, the act of using a push-to-talk button on the side, is just unheard of. So I think it's worth kind of just teaching them some basics around how half duplex works. When I say half duplex, I mean that concept of only one person can talk at a time, as opposed to full duplex, which would be like on a phone conversation. It's worth just sort of sitting down with them, teaching them about, as I mentioned earlier, the security side of things, and what they should avoid, topics of conversation they should maybe avoid, and the fact that these things can be heard across bigger distances. And maybe, you know, just consider the age of your kids and how kind of sensible they are. I mean, I obviously can't tell you what to do as parents. I can just give you advice on the fact that, you know, you get more out of something like this when you are able to use that push to talk button properly. And it does take time. You'd be surprised. I mean, it sounds like the most simple thing, but the concept is just not there in kids these days. And the second thing along those lines is, if you are going to use these as part of a group, so if you're going out on a walk or something like that and people are going in different directions, then this using things, I mean, maybe not going so far as to use call signs, but certainly to just say things like over at the end of a transmission and put just certain rules in place will aid communication, because it's just not so simple to just randomly start talking and just go, all right, John, or something like that. And I mean, it just doesn't work too well. If you actually put a call out and say who you want to talk to, and then at the end of the transmission, confirm that you finished your transmission, those simple sort of rules, if you're talking with a bigger group of people, make life much simpler. Okay, styles of walkie-talkies. What to go for? Well, there are two main styles. One is something like this. These are really, really simple. They're designed to be simple. They're designed to be easy to use and robust. They basically just have a push to talk button down the side, a couple of function buttons, channel button on the top, and a volume button, and that's it. These are great if you are someone who's going to keep it on their belt and you want access to that volume button easily. You don't want to have things that you need to see because you just want to be able to kind of feel your way around the radio easily. They are fantastic. They also allow accessories to be connected too. So you can have a kind of shoulder mic, for example. You can have the radio on your side and you can have a shoulder mic. And I have to say, I've used these with my 8-year-old son on his bike, and having a shoulder mic is amazing. It is the most useful thing ever when it comes to walkie-talkies. So if you're after that, and if that's your kind of use, you might want to consider something more like this sort of design. The alternative is something more like this, where you have soft buttons on here and you have a display. You know, another one from Motorola is something like this as well. And again, this one to a point as well. But the one thing that these often have, which I personally hate, but again, might be fine by you, is soft volume control. I prefer to have a volume control on the top that I can easily reach and just turn up if I need to, not actually go into a menu to adjust the volume. The big benefit of these is that you can access all the features through a menu system. Now, it might be a rudimentary menu system, but you can still get to the features. With this, I need to plug in a programming cable, I need to install software on my computer, and I need to spend an extra £60 on the cable to be able to use for these type of walkie-talkies. Bear that in mind, and you know, I think for family use, generally something like this is going to work better than something like this. These are going to be great for using in a pub or a leisure centre or any kind of business use, or maybe more serious kind of rambling or skiing or something like that. Okay, next one, what have we got on here? Oh, a calling button, really useful. Look out for that. If you're gonna, just a button that you press and it kind of just puts out a tone, like a blah, 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 type noise. And that is a really useful feature. Particularly if you're gonna be using these in fringe areas, and what I mean by a fringe area is when you're starting to go outside the transmission range of the walkie-talkie, and it starts to get a bit weak, the voice level goes really drops, and you might not hear it. You do hear the tone, however, and it's just a really useful feature to have a calling button. And I particularly, I think kids love them as well, because you can usually change it between kind of one of 15 different tones and things like that. So a feature worth having, as is a Roger beep. And if you don't know what a Roger beep is, it's the little tone that is played at the end of every transmission. So when you take the button, take your finger off the button, it just goes bloop, or something like that. That can get annoying if we have children using them who are not used to the push to talk and they're constantly letting go of it. But it's better than silence at the end of a transmission, because it helps with the learning of that kind of like, I've spoken and now I've finished sort of thing, because you've got that tone there to confirm the end of the transmission. So again, a Roger beep. They usually are on cheaper walkie-talkies anyway, but it's something, again, something to look out for. All right, and Waterproof or not, I put down waterproof or not, because a lot of walkie-talkies these days are waterproof, and that's just absolutely great, because it's just dead handy. I mean, there's no downsides, apart from they sometimes sound a bit worse. The speaker has to be waterproof too, and that can make them sound a little bit worse. But apart from that, it's all positives really with a waterproof walkie-talkie. It can be so helpful if you're going to go out on any kind of boat or any sort of fishing trip, or even just dropping in a puddle or a lake or something like that. Really good to have an IP-rated, IP67 or IP68 rated walkie-talkie. And I'll put a few links down in the description of different walkie-talkies which kind of fit these criteria. Long versus short antenna. Something like this versus maybe something a little bit shorter like this, or even quite a stubby antenna. In my experience, technically some radio enthusiasts would come on here and say, oh, it does make a difference. Yes, the performance isn't going to be optimal with a short antenna. It doesn't. For the type of use that most people are going to have, the difference is negligible. Don't worry about it. If short antennas are convenient for you, go with them. Clearly, there are a load of other features that walkie-talkies have that I have not covered in this video, and it would just take forever to go over all of them, but hopefully you found that useful anyway. Thanks very much for watching, and if you would like to support me, then please do use the affiliate links for Amazon in the video description, or alternatively, if you wish, you can just donate a single amount by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/tdcat. Thanks very much for watching again, and hope you found this video useful. Any questions you have, do put them in the comments and I will answer them if I can. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.